I appreciate you saying that and happy to share those reports. Secretary Hegseth, are you familiar with DoD Directive 1344.10? Political activities of the members of the armed forces?
Well, first off, I don't buy into your
yes or no?
insinuation
familiar
that pledges are being done under this administration. That's
I reclaim my
insinuation.
time. Are you familiar with this DoD directive?
There's never one time in my service or in this
Mr.
Defense
Secretary,
Department.
will you please answer
I'm answering your
these
question
questions?
where politics has been considered for service members.
Are you familiar with this directive?
Señores, lo que voy a contarles hoy es una locura. Mientras Kristi Noem hace que un senador estadounidense sea tirado y detenido, esta semana el peor secretario de gabinete de Trump, al parecer no es ella. Se trata de Pete Hegseth, el actual secretario de Defensa. Y lo es por una razón escandalosa, ya que tenemos una nueva filtración desde el propio Pentágono, la cual revela que la situación dentro de este departamento de defensa está tan mal que al parecer hay empleados llorando, literalmente. Sean bienvenidos a Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Señores, hoy veremos una nueva filtración escandalosa desde el Pentágono con Pete Hegseth. Así que los invito a que se queden hasta el final de este video porque veremos los detalles más interesantes. Ahora sí, señores, comencemos por lo que provocó esta nueva ola de filtraciones. Todo esto estalló luego de que la congresista Managerial expusiera públicamente la incompetencia de Pete Hegseth frente al Congreso. Miren esto.
I have to say, your training at Fox News has let you spend months of dangerous dysfunction and incompetence into catchy phrases like restoring the warrior ethos and increasing lethality. But the truth is, it's really been chaos at the Pentagon under your leadership. You've clearly shown you're unable to manage the Department of Defense, but what I'm most concerned about are three specific areas: your operational incompetence, your managerial incompetence, and your budgetary incompetence. So let's start with operational. According to news reports, in your first week on the job, you got confused in a National Security Council meeting and thought President Trump wanted you to stop all aid to Ukraine. In a well-functioning administration, you would have asked for clarification before making that seismic policy shift, but instead you ordered vital military aid heading to the front lines turned around, costing the U.S. millions of dollars, and depriving Ukrainian soldiers of equipment they needed to fight Russia. So, Mr. Secretary, can you explain how exactly you misunderstood such a monumental presidential order?
One of many fake news headlines we've dealt with.
So, President Trump told you to halt military aid to Ukraine on January 30th?
As is often the case, highly ideological and very ill-informed reporters love to speculate about things they know nothing about in order to spear President Trump and myself.
So it sounds like actually the reporting is correct, because I will say, if it wasn't a mistake, why did aid restart only a few days later?
Again, we would take complete issue with what would some call reporting and others call a hatchet job.
So why did aid start just a couple days later?
I'm saying the reporting is inaccurate, ma'am.
I don't think that's correct. So let's move on to your managerial incompetence. I think we can see why you misunderstood the president, because you're obviously misunderstanding my questions. Less than a month into the job, you fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, C.Q. Brown, and the chief of naval operations, Lisa Franchetti, without cause. And to this day, you still have not provided an adequate explanation for removing them. As far as I can tell, you fired C.Q. Brown because he was black and Lisa Franchetti because she is a woman. So nearly 4 months later, we still don't have a new nominee for Chief of Naval Operations. News reports, and you can contest it, but I'd love to hear your answer, say that you haven't nominated someone because qualified admirals keep turning the position down. So tell me, Mr. Secretary, when will Congress receive your nomination for the next chairman of the next chief of naval operations?
Ma'am, with all due respect, I would suggest not believing every headline you read.
With all due respect, I'd like your nomination. When will we see it?
There has not a single admiral or any military official has turned down a position that's been
So when will we see
provided.
your nominee for the chief of naval operations?
In due time, for all the right reasons.
Again, I think we've seen the managerial incompetence. Okay, let's move on to budgetary incompetence. You missed the deadline to submit a draft defense budget to Congress, which makes it impossible for us to complete our work on the NDAA or appropriations, and makes it more likely you'll receive delays in funding you need for new acquisitions, programs, and other priorities.
Y es que Pete Hegseth quizás sea la persona más incompetente y la menos calificada en toda esta administración. Y yo creo que eso es ya decir mucho. Pero lo más brutal de todo esto no es lo que decimos solo nosotros, porque lo dicen sus propios empleados. Literalmente, amigos, nadie quiere trabajar con él. Y los que ya trabajan con él tampoco quieren estar ahí. Esto es lo que revela una nueva filtración desde dentro del Pentágono. Un grupo de más de una docena de funcionarios filtró detalles devastadores sobre el colapso de liderazgo dentro del Departamento de Defensa, provocado por Pete Hegseth y, por supuesto, por Donald Trump. La situación es tan grave que, según el reporte, la seguridad nacional está siendo socavada a niveles alarmantes. Pete Hegseth, como bien sabemos, es un ex presentador de Fox News sin ningún tipo de experiencia en liderazgo militar. Fue colocado por Trump como el secretario civil del ejército y, pues prácticamente desde su llegada, lo único que ha generado son escándalos, despidos, filtraciones y un ambiente muy tóxico. Una fuente del Pentágono lo resumió así: Pete está jugando a ser secretario, pero no está actuando como uno real. Incluso mencionaron el reciente bombardeo de Israel a Irán como el tipo de crisis que Pete Hegseth es incapaz de manejar. Otro funcionario del Pentágono, con muchos años de experiencia, dijo que estuvo al borde de las lágrimas al describir el nivel de desorganización y la falta de preparación que tiene la oficina del secretario. Mientras tanto, pues, ¿en qué se concentra Hegseth? En hacer ejercicio, tomarse selfies con los soldados, literal, se la pasa posteando fotos de sí mismo, levantando pesas y hablando de expulsar a militares trans. Por si fuese poco, está completamente paranoico sobre las filtraciones, tanto que tuvo que designar como jefe de gabinete a su amigo Brovid, Joe Casper, el cual pues cayó muy mal, ¿no?, a todos desde el primer minuto. 3 altos funcionarios fueron despedidos el 15 de abril, si es que no lo recuerdan, acusados de supuestamente ser los filtradores, aunque no tuvieron pruebas. Uno de ellos, que es Colin Carroll, dijo que se dio cuenta de que Casper era un idiota en menos de 30 segundos. Y bueno, amigos, todo esto nos demuestra algo muy claro. La administración de Trump no está enfocada en el profesionalismo. Está obsesionada con la lealtad personal. También lo vimos cuando Trump mandó a revisar el perfil político, ¿no?, y hasta la apariencia física de los soldados que estarían a su alrededor en Fort Bragg. Todo esto para asegurarse de que lo aplaudieran mientras incitaba a abucheos contra Gavin Newsom y contra la alcaldesa Karen Bass. Amigos, eso es lo que quiere Trump. Quiere lealtad ciega, no quiere liderazgo, no quiere criterio, solo quiere obediencia. Claramente Pete Hegseth comparte esa visión. El congresista Rukan se lo dijo directamente cuando le preguntaron sobre si respetaría las decisiones judiciales en medio del despliegue militar en Los Ángeles. Y escuchen su respuesta.
Senator Baldwin asked you about the legal authority for the Marines in my state. I disagree with you. I thought not only do I not want Marines in Iran, I don't want them in California. But I don't want to get a gotcha. You know, they said, what provision? Your administration since then has filed in the federal district court. You're arguing that the Marines should be allowed to defend federal property. I disagree with you. That's your argument. Here's where I hope we can agree. Whatever the federal district court decides, will you abide by it?
Well, this is a pending situation.
So will you agree, though, that it's not my legal view, it's not your legal view that makes the decision in America. It's the federal judiciary. If the federal court in California and the San Francisco district judge has orders a preliminary injunction, will you agree to abide by the federal courts?
What I will tell you is my job right now is to ensure the troops that we have in Los Angeles are capable of supporting law enforcement in
Sir, I agree with that, but will you...
And we know we have the
just assure...
constitutional and statutory authority
That's fine, but
to do that.
Can you just assure us that you'll abide by the decisions of the courts?
We've always looked at the decisions of
the Vice President has said that he doesn't believe that the courts should be respected in military matters.
Well, this is not my lane, but we also recognize that the way in which the judiciary has expanded its powers.
But can you just
during the
give a
Trump
simple?
administration
Okay,
is
let me
quite
ask you this:
clear.
two simple questions. You got 30 seconds. I'm not trying to trick you. I think it would assure the American people. Because it shouldn't be Ro Khanna's view of the Constitution, and it shouldn't be Secretary Hegseth's. It should be the Supreme Court and the federal courts. Can you assure the American people on two things? You will respect any Supreme Court decision on this matter about whether the Marines are constitutional, and you will respect the district courts when they rule before the Supreme Court rules.
What I can say is we should not have local judges determining foreign policy or national security policy for the country.
So you're not willing to say you would respect those decisions?
What I'm saying is local district judges shouldn't make foreign policy for the United States.
In addition, in an incredibly disturbing incident, there was a pop-up shop selling MAGA merchandise on post at Fort Bragg. And to summarize this, there was a commander from Bragg who said on the record, quote, "This has been a bad week for the Army, for anyone who cares about us being a neutral institution. This was shameful." If those are the facts, and I know the Army is investigating at least the MAGA pop-up shop, is that appropriate, General Kane?
Sir, I haven't seen any of these reports. I'm not familiar with them, but as I mentioned earlier and in my confirmation hearing, the nation demands a political, nonpartisan military.
I appreciate you saying that and happy to share those reports. Secretary Hegseth, are you familiar with DoD Directive 1344.10? Political activities of the members of the armed forces?
Well, first off, I don't buy
Are you-
into
yes
your
or no?
insinuation
Are you familiar
that pledges
with-
are being done under this administration. That's
I
for
reclaim my
insinuation.
time. Are you familiar with this DoD directive?
There's never one time in my service or in this
Mr.
Defense
Secretary,
Department.
will you please answer
I'm answering your
these
question
questions?
where politics has been considered for service members.
Are you familiar with this directive? Yes or no?
Which directive?
DoD Directive 1344.10. I'm happy to provide you a copy. There's even a one-page red and green cheat sheet. Are you familiar with it? This is the same directive from when we were all in uniform.
I'm sure I am.
Has anything changed in that directive under your guidance, given what happened 2 days ago at Fort Bragg? Is there a new policy change that we're not aware of?
Again, I totally reject your insinuation.
Is there a policy change to DoD Directive 1344.10?
I know what you're attempting to insinuate, but there's
I'll
been no
take that as a
policy
no.
change and there is no policy.
Mr. Secretary, have you ever worn a MAGA hat in front of the troops?
I own plenty of MAGA hats, but I don't.
Have you
know
ever
that I
worn
have.
one in front of the troops at an official event? I don't
I'm
believe
aware
so.
of.
I don't believe so. Do you think it's appropriate for the President of the United States to wear political merchandise, including a MAGA hat, at official events, including West Point commencement?
The Commander-in-Chief
Yes or no?
can wear whatever hat he wants, to include the phrase, "Make America Great Again," because I would like to
you
make
think
America
that's-
great again as well.
So you think that's appropriate?
The Commander-in-Chief has the right, in front of his troops, to wear whatever he'd like.
Okay, I strongly disagree with you. And I urge you both, especially you, General Kane, as we see an increasingly political rhetoric, including from the...
Y es que esto no sorprende. Lo que sí preocupa, y mucho, es la forma en la cual esta administración utiliza la lealtad como una arma política. No se trata solo de incompetencia, sino que es autoritarismo disfrazado de patriotismo. De este modo, amigos, también quiero que hablemos un poco sobre lo que fue esta expulsión y arresto forzoso de un legislador demócrata en esta conferencia de prensa que sucedió hace unos días. Este enfrentamiento entre el gobierno y los legisladores, en este caso, ¿no? El protagonista es el senador Alex Padilla, el cual intentó hacer una pregunta durante una conferencia de prensa con la secretaria de Seguridad Nacional, Congressional, pero esto que ocurrió luego no solo nos dejó boquiabiertos, sino que también pone en tela de juicio cómo es que se están manejando ciertas dinámicas políticas bajo la sombra de Donald Trump. Antes de que entremos a todos los detalles, quiero que vean exactamente lo que pasó. Quiero que veamos a este senador cómo reacciona ante este momento y sus palabras. Veamos esta noticia.
We'll start with you. Thank you for being with us this morning. Let's just get your reaction to what happened overnight and is still happening as we speak, despite, as mentioned, warnings or requests, I should say, from the United States to give a diplomacy a chance. Israel has hit Iran and hit it hard. Your reaction?
Well, Jonathan, I think we need to just consider for a second how we got here. I mean, that's what I was thinking about last night. I mean, you've got to back up all the way to the Obama administration, where they put in the nuclear deal, the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And that reduced the enrichment of uranium and the type of centrifuges that Iran was allowed to have to make just fuel-grade uranium below 4% enrichment. And then in 2018, when Donald Trump was president in the first Trump term, he terminated that agreement. At that point, Iran did not have the amount and the quality of uranium to make a nuclear weapon. And my view is that was a colossal mistake. And then over the years, they have increased the amount of uranium, and to get a weapons, you need 90% enrichment, or actually a little bit higher than that. So they've been on this trajectory for a while to be able to build a nuclear weapon. And certainly Israel has a right to defend itself, to make sure that they don't get to what's called breakout, to have the uranium to make a real bomb. And they're getting close. I mean, we've been watching this, and we expected this. Now, my hope was that this administration, this president who says he's really good at making deals, though we haven't seen that in Ukraine with Russia, his involvement there. But the same thing here is that negotiation failed. So now my biggest concern is just for, our equities in the region, U.S. citizens in the Middle East. I do not want to see a larger conflict, and I agree that we should continue, or the Israelis should start negotiations again with the Iranians.
So, Chris Matthews, an interesting subplot to all of this is a relationship between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. They were very close during Trump's first term. Netanyahu angered Trump when he recognized Joe Biden as the rightful winner of the 2020 election. This time, things started off on the right foot. We remember Trump's Middle East Riviera plan for Gaza, but there's been real signs of strain since, to the point where President Trump skipped Israel when he was in the Middle East not long ago. And now it appears, even if it's not open defiance, Netanyahu didn't take Trump's advice and went forward with these attacks.
Yeah, if you look at American history with Israel, it's interesting. It's not fickle, but it does change. If Israel looks like it's the underdog, like it did in the Six-Day War, where it did win that whole war, thanks to Nashayan, we were rooting like hell for them, really rooting for them against all those Arab countries that were attacking them, including Egypt. And then when you look at their attack on Gaza, the American people are very split on that. But when it goes to Israel, it gets to Israel's defense, its actual existence, the American people are 100% with them. And they look at Iran. Why does Iran want a bomb? Well, it may want a bomb to do the one strike thing, as the ambassador said, one bomb country. You knock out Tel Aviv, and that's it. That's the ball game. And so Israel can't afford to have an aggressive war by nuclear weapons with Iran. They have to stop them from having nuclear weapons. Now, Obama said, I'll put a time limit on it. They can't have one for 5 years. Well, fairly enough, Trump said that's a joke. 5 years, they'll have one. So that's not going to stop them. So he can't make a deal that says X many years. He can't come out and say, OK, we're going to stop from getting a weapon for 5 years. He'll be laughed at, because that's what the Obama deal was. So he has to really get rid of the bomb-making ability of that country. He's got to stop them from their nuclear route. He's got to get them off that route to something else. And he says it's hard to get there. Well, yes, it is hard to get there, because that's what they want to do. They want to bomb Israel. It's basically what they want to do, and scare the hell out of them if they don't. But I think it's an aggressive war by Iran, and that's why people are rooting for Israel in this situation with Iran. Now, with Gaza, totally different situation.
So, Senator, let's get your reaction here. Where you said a moment ago that you would like to see negotiations continue. President Trump does as well. But I was talking to actually a diplomat from the region a short time ago who cast that as very unlikely, at least for the time being, because Iran, just to save face domestically, is going to need to hit back in some way, even though its ability to do so has been severely compromised since October 7th due to all the attacks, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the like. And also they can't be seen as being bullied back to the negotiating table.
Well, it's also been compromised in regard to just the strikes last night, right?
Sure.
They've got to be able to, deliver, kinetic, operations on the Israelis, and that's going to be, really, really hard for them. And the Israelis are going to continue this operation. This isn't the kind of thing that you're going to do in one night, especially with their limited ability, limited tanking ability. They don't have like heavy bombers like we do and other countries do. They're, small fighters with smaller amounts of munitions. This is going to take some time if the goal is to completely eliminate the program. But I do think at some point here, they need to have a discussion with the Iranians because their nuclear capability needs to be removed. But at the same time, we do run a significant risk that this thing spreads beyond just a Iranian-Israeli conflict. And it's not going to be good for any country to have a wider war in the Middle East.
So, Senator, let's now turn to matters here at home, the situation in Los Angeles. Another night of a curfew there. There were some protests, but it certainly has calmed down as the week has continued. We had a court order that last night said that President Trump would not have the ability to mobilize the National Guard without the governor's approval. But now another appeals court has put a stay on that, so he at least still has that ability through Tuesday. We'll learn more. And then, of course, amid all of this, in Los Angeles, one of your colleagues, Senator Padilla of California, tried to ask a question of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem at her news conference, at what point he was manhandled, thrown to the ground, handcuffed. We want to get your reaction to that. Let's watch it again now, and then I'll come to you on the other side.
And balancing. Sir, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the Secretary, because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your
I also want to
hands up.
How many of our ICE agents have been docked?
On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
If you don't my hands, go ahead, put behind my back.
All right, cool. One hand, lay flat, lay flat.
Other hand, sir. Other hand.
Now, the biggest part of the Homeland Security's defense, Senator, was that Senator Kelly was that Senator Padilla did not identify himself. But we can clearly hear he does. He does so loudly multiple times. So your reaction there, not just to this incident, but also the idea this is a co-equal branch of government, the branch you serve, the legislative branch, a member of that trying to ask the executive branch a question, and that's what happens.
Well, Jonathan, normally what would...
Y es que, amigos, un miembro del Congreso de los Estados Unidos, un representante elegido por el pueblo, siendo tratado como un criminal solo por hacer su trabajo, por segunda vez. Esto ya no es un incidente aislado. Esto es el reflejo de algo que es mucho más profundo, ¿no? Algo mucho más preocupante. Primero quiero que hablemos del contexto. Es esta relación entre el poder ejecutivo y el poder legislativo. Esto siempre ha sido tenso, no es la primera vez. Lo que sí es que nunca había llegado a tal extremo, ¿no? Como ver a un legislador siendo arrestado por simplemente pedir explicaciones. Esto no ocurre en democracias fuertes. Esto ocurre en países donde el autoritarismo comienza a asomar la cabeza. Si bien este incidente, ¿no?, involucra directamente a la administración actual, vemos un patrón muy claro que podríamos rastrearlo y estoy seguro que llegamos al mismo objetivo, y es Donald Trump. Él tiene esta historia de confrontación con los medios, con los críticos e incluso hasta con los propios legisladores. Recordemos cómo es que constantemente él deslegitimaba, ¿no?, a quienes no estaban de acuerdo con él, desde congresistas hasta jueces, y lo sigue haciendo. Esa es la mentalidad de nosotros contra ellos. Esto no solo polariza la política, sino que también termina creando un ambiente donde el tipo de abusos que estamos viendo pueden ocurrir sin tener una consecuencia. Lo primero que me llamó la atención de este caso, ¿no?, de Padilla, fue la justificación oficial, que nos identificó. si lo escucharon el clip, claramente, ¿no? Se oye como grita varias veces: soy el senador Alex Padilla. Además, Kristi Noem, como secretaria de Seguridad Nacional, debería de saber quién es. O sea, él forma parte del comité que supervisa su trabajo en el Senado. Entonces, ¿qué está pasando aquí? Mi teoría es que esto no es un error, tampoco es un malentendido. Es parte de esta estrategia más amplia para poder silenciar a quienes cuestionan el poder establecido. Ya lo hemos visto antes. Líderes autoritarios en otros países utilizan tácticas muy similares, todo para poder intimidar a sus oponentes. Arrestan periodistas, acallan a activistas, y en este caso, ¿no?, detienen a legisladores frente a las cámaras. Ya esto no es normal, y es algo que no deberíamos aceptarlo tal como es. Sé que algunos podrían decirme, bueno, tal vez interrumpió la conferencia, ¿no?, o no siguió el protocolo, pero que hay un problema. ¿Desde cuándo detener a un senador por hacer preguntas se convirtió en parte de un protocolo? El hecho de que esta acción sea defendida por algunos sectores, ¿no?, nos demuestra cuánto hemos normalizado los comportamientos antidemocráticos. Además de que no podemos ignorar el contexto político en el cual ocurre todo esto. Ocurrió en medio de protestas, tensiones sociales en Los Ángeles. O sea, la administración está tratando de controlar el caos, pero ¿a qué costo? Vamos a sacrificar principios básicos como lo es la libertad de expresión, el respeto a las instituciones, solo para poder mantener el orden. Porque, amigos, créanme, ese es un camino muy peligroso. Creo que este incidente es más que una señal, es una advertencia. No importa de qué lado tú estés en el espectro político, se tiene que estar unido en defensa de la democracia, de las libertades fundamentales, amigos. No importa si eres demócrata, no importa si eres republicano, no importa si eres ninguno de ellos. Permitir que este tipo de acciones continúen es algo que no solo debilita las instituciones, sino que también nos acerca peligrosamente a un sistema donde la voz del pueblo va a dejar de importar. Pero bueno, señores, quiero saber qué opinan ustedes. ¿Creen que este tipo de incidentes son alarmantes o simplemente son exagerados? Los invito a que me dejen sus opiniones en la caja de comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Recuerda, como siempre, darle like, comparte nuestro contenido y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente en Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.